Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I get to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our communities. What did they do to get started? And what are they doing to stay there? And oh my goodness, are you in for a treat today as I'm bringing you another special guest? Today, I'm getting to talk with Jackie Rodriguez. She is the Chief People Officer at Spanish Schoolhouse. She's also a volunteer for Women with Promise, and I'm so excited to have you on the show. How you doing, Jackie?
Excellent. It's truly an honor to be here with you today.
What's honored to be with you too. I've had you on my. I have like this list of people that I want to get on the show, and you've been on my list, and I'm so glad to have you on the show. When I open up my podcast, I always like to reflect on when I met my guests or when they might have came into my path. But for you, I want to see if you remember this, and gosh, I don't remember the year, but I want to say it was around 2012. But I met you at a Dallas HR luncheon and
That's right.
you were just so energizing. Do you remember that? What were you?
I do. I remember, well, the days of Dallas HR. I met a lot of wonderful people like you. It's been just such an instrumental uh, place to just find the greatest people in our profession. And I do remember meeting you there.
Yes, yes, that was many years ago. I think it was right before I became president of the organization. And so, anyway, I just
Mhm.
remember meeting you then, and you've been in my path ever since. We've been great, business partners and just great friends. And so now I get to have you on the show. This is so good. Well, let me as we get started, for those who don't know Spanish Schoolhouse, share a brief highlight of Spanish Schoolhouse and how you serve your customers.
Certainly. Well, for over 25 years, Spanish Schoolhouse has brought the gift of language and the love of learning to preschoolers throughout the DFW and Houston area. And today we have over 21 preschools with almost 400 plus employees, and the majority of which are Latinas. So a lot of educators and teachers in our workforce. And I have the good pleasure of being able to serve as the head of the employee experience. So
Hmm.
anything that has to do with recruiting, development, engagement, and total rewards, the whole gamut.
I love that. And I've got to meet your team members. I've worked with you for many years, and one thing that always stands out to me is that you always have, and we're going to talk about this today, but you always have this great culture. And I know that leadership rises and everything rises and falls from leadership, right? And so it's so
Absolutely.
important for that. And so I want to get into that. But before we do, I would love to hear, like I know you and I know a lot about you, but I bet there's some things I don't know. I would love to hear the Jackie Rodriguez story. Like, where did you grow up and how in the world did you get into leadership and being a people leader?
Yeah, I grew up in a small Texas border town called Eagle Pass.
Hmm.
And when I was around 2 years old, my mom found herself single and she joined the Navy. And I grew up there in that little town with my grandparents. And they helped me and my brother kind of grow up. They were migrant workers. So we did a little bit of back and forth between California and Texas during those years. Later on in life, I found myself in school, in high school, in this little town. And I was very blessed to have very caring teachers and counselors who encouraged me to think about college.
Hmm.
And I didn't really ever see women who were CEOs or doctors or lawyers or anything like that. The women that I saw in my life were either moms, they were teachers, maybe administrators. And so I thought, I want to go to college and I'll become a teacher because I thought
Hmm.
that was like the highest profession, and I still believe that. I earned a full ride to UT Austin with the goal of becoming a teacher.
Hmm.
However, life took a turn as it often does, and I left school to care for my grandmother who raised me and was battling cancer. And
Hmm.
so things happened. I then got married, had our first daughter, and I needed a job. And so I
Hmm.
opened the paper back then and saw an ad for a bilingual coordinator. And it happened to be an HR coordinator at the Hilton Hotel out in Grapevine
Hmm.
at the Executive Conference Center. And so I applied and got that job. And I had no idea what HR was. I It was serendipity. I stumbled into HR. This was not intentional.
Yes.
It was a great training ground though, because I was the only Spanish speaking person on our team. And we had it was a big property, 400 employees, and everything in HR had to be translated. And
Mm,
so I got to see and learn a whole lot while I was there.
mm.
And that's how I got into HR. It was
Wow.
just by serendipity.
Wow. Now, where is Eagle Pass at? Is that
It's
down by
it's south of
Brownsville?
San Antonio,
Oh, San
far
Antonio.
north. Yeah,
Okay.
south of San Antonio. Mhm.
Okay. Well, first of all, thankful your mom serving in the Navy. My grandfather served in the Navy
Yeah.
uh, back during World War II. So that's a blessing. But man, there's so much here. And as I'm taking, and by the way, if you're listening, you go ahead and get out your journal, your pen. You're going to be taking a lot of notes here because there's going to be a lot of wisdom. But as you talked about your experience, hey, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to UT. And then you went to college and then you left and then you went back. Did you go back and finish?
I went back and I focused my time back in school because I had two small children. So it was
Yeah.
really hard. I worked full time, had
Yeah.
these two babies, but I did go back. I would go 1 or 2 evenings a week,
Yeah.
and I was taking all the core HR curriculum.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be able to do my job, my day
Yeah.
job, because I started, working very deeply in HR, and so I did go back and
Yeah.
eventually had enough knowledge base to earn my
Yeah.
SPHR and get professionally accredited.
I love that. And
Mhm.
I wanted to highlight this particular point right here because I went to college. I went to live with my grandma. It was the highlight of my, like one of the highlights of my life. 19 years old, went off to college. My mom would told me, she said, "Hey, I can't pay room and board, but you can go live with your grandma." And I'm like, I'm going to live with my grandma. And I went to college, and a year later, my wife and I got married, and she was graduating from college, and I was so I left college, and I left college for 4 years, and 3 kids later, I went back to start that journey again. And so I'm glad, I appreciate you sharing that because I think a lot of times people like they start something and then they have to, they something happens and they have to pivot and and they get in their mind that, hey, I don't know if I can go back. And I love how you're like, you know what, things happen in life, things, and that's just a different season. And then when you get the opportunity, then you can go back and do anything you want to do, can't you?
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be the path that everybody or the most people took,
Yeah.
if you will. And I encourage people, young people nowadays, that if you didn't have the opportunity or means to go to college and get that degree, that doesn't mean that you're doomed, right? And so
Mm.
to this day, there have been times that before, I was at Spanish Schoolhouse and I was looking for an opportunity, to land. And I interviewed for some places I didn't even get the interview because I couldn't check that box.
Mm.
I had an SPHR, I have 30 years doing this. I was like, then you know what? That's not the place for me. That's
That's
okay.
right.
But there is a
Yes.
place for you. And that's why I
Yes.
encourage folks of whatever path, you just take every opportunity, learn, constantly
Yeah.
learn in and out of school, and the right opportunities will come to you.
I love that. This is such a great conversation, and I will tell you that I love how you said if I couldn't check the box, it's not for me. Like you had that mindset, like, hey, listen, if they're looking only for that, that's not for me. I just got to go find the people that want me. And by
Mhm.
the way, today I feel like it's a little bit different because there's so many certifications you can go out there and get. Like you took your SPHR, I have my PHR and my SHRM CP, and I feel like that's like almost like a degree in itself, isn't it?
Well, it demonstrates not only the knowledge, but you have to have a little bit of experience and wisdom to apply that knowledge. And so, definitely, I feel like that really had, for me personally, not for anybody else, but for me,
Hmm.
it validated the fact that, yes, I am a professional in this field and I
Hmm.
have a lot to offer.
And then lastly, I wrote down a lady's name. Her name was Maria. Whenever I was the manager of a department when I first got into the business, and I was promoted to manager, and I was building my team out. I was leading our international division, and I didn't have, I needed someone who could speak Spanish. And so I specifically hired this lady to come in and speak Spanish. And she's been in the business ever since. We're still very good friends. She's been in business now for 30 years. And that's kind of how she got her start. I've always even tried to learn a different language myself. Like I've tried to learn Spanish, but if you don't speak it often, if you don't always use it, it's hard to really learn it. Is it because you were around the Spanish speaking all the time? Or how did you learn to speak English? Or how did that evolve?
That's a great question because even growing up in a border town, even if you learn Spanish, you don't learn proper Spanish
Hmm.
just by chance. So intentionally, my grandparents spoke Spanish at home, so I
Okay.
was able to learn it from them when I lived with them. But then we went to church, and church was Spanish, and so I learned how to read and write, and was exposed to the language throughout my youth in church. So my day was in English and my evenings and weekends were in Spanish. And so I got the really the best of both worlds.
Oh
But I'll
my
tell you
gosh.
what, we've learned, and now working in Spanish Schoolhouse,
Yeah.
the advantages of learning from a childhood, from being a toddler, preschooler, and learning both languages. I didn't know that at the time, but the science shows that you're using different parts of your brain at that age. That's why it's harder
Oh.
when you try to learn it when you're an adult. It's really hard,
Hmm.
but when you're at that age where you're like a little sponge, and I have almost 2-year-old granddaughter, and she just learns like a word every day, and it's
Mm.
both languages, and she's just really observe, just her brain works differently.
Yeah, I didn't think about that with the like
Mhm,
the study of like how that helps you even in your cognitive ability and your brain.
mhm.
I
Yep.
man, it's so good. And people don't realize the power of like you used the word earlier, continuous learning, and I feel like high performers are continuous learners. And so I just want to encourage people even listen to the podcast. If you got a chance to learn something different, you can add incredible value to the organization, whether it's speaking a different language or being a facilitator, whatever that is. There's so many different opportunities. It is so good. Well, let me ask you this. So okay, so you said, hey, I didn't even know what HR was. And then here I am. I'm now in HR. Was there a moment when you found your lane, when you found your purpose, you're like, hey, I really love doing this? Or were there moments that led to that?
There were a series of moments. I remember the earliest days working at the Hilton, and there were some moments of crisis that, as HR professionals, we were kind of called to step into that I felt like, wow, what meaningful work to be able
Mm,
to navigate through difficult situations. When I got into my ad agency years, I did deep work in recruiting, and I love recruiting because it was
mm,
just the thrill of matching. I was a matchmaker, great talent and great opportunities, and seeing people fulfill their potential. I remember we needed a receptionist, and we needed somebody bilingual, and we just couldn't find the right person. And I knew this gal who, I knew her personally. She'd been struggling. She was in kind of a social circle, I think, at church, and single mom. And I was like, she'd be great. Her personality,
mm.
even she didn't see that in of herself, but I encouraged her. I was like, hey, why don't you apply and interview for this opportunity? I think you could be. I don't have that experience, but just try. Today, she started at the ad agency as a receptionist, and was very curious and started learning other things at the agency. Today, she is a producer working at a major agency.
Wow.
That to me is the thrill of my career, is seeing just the people blossom.
Mm,
Just, when somebody just kind of gave them that little nudge, or that little,
yeah.
open door, or
I love
introduction even.
I love that story because I
Mhm.
think that at the end of the day, that's what people are looking for in the workplace. They're looking for purpose. And when you're
Yes,
able to like figure out like, yes, when I'm able to help someone, it just like it just amplifies that inside of you, doesn't it? Yeah.
absolutely.
I love that. When you I wrote down when you were telling that story, I said she looks for the good in others. Is that like you said, and you also used the word love. When someone uses the word love, like you said, I love recruiting. That tell like it to me, it's deeper. It's like I like that's something that moves me. What
Absolutely.
what have you always just been that person who's just are looking for the good in people? You're looking for opportunities to help people. Talk about that. Or did that just like evolve over time?
I've always been a person who it just kind of sees that talent, that spark, and it's
Yeah.
just, sometimes it's not always quantifiable. Sometimes you just know.
Yeah.
So I remember watching American Idol, and I always guessed the winner. It was regardless. I
Really?
could spot there's
I
the
love
one,
that.
there's that bright spot. And sometimes I see, when employees, especially early in their careers, don't see in of themselves the potential they have.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not something that's a proven talent, but there's a spark and a potential.
Yeah.
To me, that is just so invigorating to be able to help someone along that journey. And I think that comes from a place where someone did that for me all
Mm.
along the way. I'm so just eternally grateful to those people I've met, and some of them are still dear friends and mentors to this day that helped me get to where I'm at. That high school teacher, that counselor, that I still remember who they are, their faces, and I
Mm.
wouldn't be here and who I am if somebody didn't do that for me. Because otherwise, I should have just been a statistic.
That's a great point.
Latina, small town,
Yeah.
dropout, didn't finish college. Like
Yeah.
all of the things that people say you should become, I didn't because somebody believed something better for me.
I love that. And they modeled the way for you and you got to see what
Mhm.
that looked like. You're like, hey, that's what I want.
Absolutely.
That's so good. I love that. Hey,
Mhm.
well, I do want to ask a question here around leadership. One of the things that I do like to ask my guests is whenever you hear the word leadership, like how do you, when someone says, hey, what's leadership to you? How do you respond to that?
Leadership is not one thing. It's a
Mm,
collective. It's a collective of behaviors. It's a collection of values and a mindset, the thoughts that you have. When you come together, it enables you to influence and mobilize a
mm,
team towards a single direction. That's leadership. And things are going to come along to get in the way of where you're trying to get to. But leadership helps you to overcome those obstacles and find those solutions. And it's again that collection of behaviors when things get hard. It's the collection of your mindset, of the things that you believe about yourself and why you do what you why you're even going to that
mm-hmm,
destination. And mobilizing others to go with you, that you're not
mm,
going alone. That's leadership, and it's service. It's when you get to the place that it's not about you anymore.
mm,
You don't get, if you want to be a leader, then, you better be ready to not be at the priority.
mm-hmm.
Leading is about putting others first.
I love that. And you use the word immobilize. And I was just
Mhm.
thinking about whenever I was at a company years ago, they said, if you want a promotion, you got to go find your replacement. In other words, you need to go develop somebody on your team to take your spot. And that's where I really first started learning real leadership is like, hey, your job is really to help them succeed and take your role or to take another role to where they can continue to do that. And I love all that. I would like to ask you a question though, because you got into HR early and now here we are, we're 2025. Oh my goodness.
I
I don't
know.
know. How's HR changed in your view?
In my view, in the early days, HR was at best administrators of paperwork
Yeah.
and policies.
Yeah.
At worst, people thought we were, bureaucratic henchmen or just the office police, right?
Hmm.
And I had no interest in being either one of those. And
Hmm.
either you're kind of admin party planner or you're kind of somebody to be feared. And I
Yeah.
was never determined early on that's not the path for me. And I plan a fabulous party, I'll still do that, but and the paperwork has to get
Yeah.
done. But it's
Right.
bigger than that. And today I see us where we've evolved, where we're much if you do if you're in it for the right reasons and you develop in the right way, you can be a trusted advisor. You can
Hmm.
really keep that heartbeat of your organization in a kind of going in a healthy direction, right? That the culture piece. If you're doing it right and for the right reasons, you could really, really make an impact in the lives of people, not just in the work, a 9 to 5, but just in life. And I
Yeah.
think that is really what's rewarding about being in HR. And I love to see the journey we've taken in the past 30 years.
It's interesting too because you had talked earlier. We started this conversation about the value of teachers.
Mhm.
And really, you become a teacher as the head of HR. You are
Yeah.
in your organization, and you're able to model that for so many people. It's just got to be fulfilling.
It's fulfilling, but I tell you what, you can't just be a know-it-all and have all the answers because you don't. So
Mm,
the only thing I've learned at this stage is that of how much I don't know, right? And
mm,
what I have learned is my mistakes. So I'm
hmm
not, if people learn, I also want them to learn from my mistakes.
hmm
Hey, I learned this in this situation. It was really hard, and I wish I would have made a different decision, or I now know that I could have
hmm
done X. And so I think that being authentic and vulnerable is really important as a leader because you can't just come up there and say, "Oh, I have all the answers. This is what you
hmm
should do." People don't kind of get turned off by that. I would. I want to learn about the good and the bad, and
hmm
that's how you get a richer experience.
It's interesting how you say what I've learned is how much I don't know.
Mhm.
And how much I
Yes.
need to learn. That's what I've learned. It's just a continuous path. And you talked about being vulnerable, and I gave you a few questions on here that I want to ask you. But when you said that, it just now prompted me to think about something where it seems to me like we're in a time now where everybody seems like we're hearing a lot about vulnerability. Everybody wants to share their voice. But there's kind of a balance there, isn't there? Like in the workplace, like talk about that for a second, because how does somebody listening right now, and maybe they're a people leader and they're trying to teach their team as well. Do you teach that to your team members? Like, hey, being vulnerable, being authentic. How do people balance that?
Yeah, there's a degree of appropriateness, empathy that goes along with that because it's not just about, I love the work that Brene Brown's done, around this
Mm,
topic of vulnerability.
yeah.
And some of it's just reconciling things in your own mind, necessarily not the things that you say or share, but experiences and the way you see yourself that helps you to be vulnerable in an
Mm,
appropriate way. So being, healthy about in your mindset about it. And some of her work really talks to that, but also I think if you're going to be vulnerable and authentic, it's about the other person. It's not just about sharing your story and your experience, but it's like being intentional about what do you want the other person to walk away with from that
mm,
conversation. What do you want them to think? What do you want them to feel? um and being intentional that it's about them, it's not about you and your story.
mm. I love that. And I think what also you're saying is it's okay to share your personal experiences if you can be intentional about it to help others with that in some way, right? That's so good.
Precisely.
Oh, I love that. Hey, well, one of the things that I did want to talk about because I read it on your LinkedIn, I've experienced it in with your team, and that's culture. You just have this I don't know if it's you have this knack or you've worked very hard to build culture. So for those who are listening, I don't know, what are some things that I don't know, that you do or that you make sure you do to make sure that you have built great culture in your organization?
First and foremost, I think to build great culture, you have to really look inwardly as an organization to really understand what are your values and not what
Mm-hmm.
what do you want to say, what's good marketing, because I worked in
Mm-hmm.
marketing, so I understand like that world. And you're not trying to spin anything. Really, who are you as an organization? What do you value? If you're a leader in the organization, everything you do is culture. It's all of your decisions, your behavior, all of it impacts culture. So it's not that there's one person working on culture. I think that when I go into an organization, I bring with me the leadership that's there. Because, like you said, it starts from the top. Let's
Yeah.
get leaders together and let's talk about these topics of what do we stand for? What behaviors are tolerated? What isn't tolerated? And what is the ultimate destination? Why are we here?
Mm,
What keeps us going when it gets really, really hard? And as a leader, you have to see your work that way. If you get to a place where you have an environment where people trust each other, they're collaborative, they're working as a team, and they're staying together for a common cause
mm,
that's bigger than any one person, then you have a pretty good culture.
Mm,
And so I think that culture is about, getting really clear about your mission, your
hmm.
values. I'm not saying that because whenever I say mission and values, I think people think of posters on the wall. It's like,
Right.
no, that's not it's the deep work, but
Hmm.
also it's about, making decisions based on those values when it's hard, making
Hmm.
the right calls for the right reasons.
Yeah.
That's when your values really come to life. And so great cultures are very intentional. And they definitely, most definitely depend on strong leadership.
I'm with you on that because that's usually when it shows up when it's time to make a tough call.
Mhm.
Are we really living the value of doing the right thing? Are we really valuing the relationship in our organization? Those are a couple of ours, and I think about that whenever we do that. I use some great words here, trust, building trust, and but when it gets hard, that's what it all boils down to. But one of the things that I do like to ask is for people who are listening, they're like, hey, well, how do I know? How do I know I have a good culture? Do you like also use metrics to say, hey, we have a great culture because we have this is our retention rate or this is our stay rate? Any thoughts around that? Do you use metrics?
Absolutely. I think any accountable organization, any organization that is doing the right things has a way to measure that they're doing the right
Hmm.
things. What gets measured gets done, right?
Yeah.
And so for me and in my world, it's, yeah, let's look at retention. Are we retaining the right people? Are we
Mm-hmm.
promoting from within? And are we
Mm-hmm.
measuring that? Who are we developing? What is their path? And so we have, very measurable talent review metrics, very
Mm-hmm.
measurable retention metrics. And so I do believe strongly you have to measure these things to really be able to demonstrate to the organization, to the board, to
Mm-hmm.
whomever, to yourself that you
Yeah.
really are not just saying that you have a great culture,
Yeah.
but that you can demonstrate that you really are living it.
Yeah, this is so good. And I think this is going to be very
Mhm.
helpful for people who are listening. They're like, hey, we've been talking a lot about culture. Hey, maybe we need to look at this from this angle. So I appreciate you sharing that. I do want to ask you one other question, and that is I'm hearing a lot, like I see this all the time when I go to a conference. I see this topic. I've just got back from Texas Sherm's Global Conference, and they talked about the same thing, and that's the future of work. And so I'm just wondering, do y'all talk about that in your organization? Do you talk about the future of work? Any thoughts around the future of work and maybe what that might look like?
Absolutely. We're very future minded because our customers are the future, right? Our 3-year-olds, our 4-year-olds.
Yes.
And so in the way in which we are educating them, and the principles by which we do that is very important, right? Is very intentional. But as far as the workforce that was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and this is an organization 25 years of history, is not the same workforce we have today.
Hmm.
There was a time that the teachers that were working at Spanish Schoolhouse were the moms of the kids who had backgrounds from their home countries, and their spouses were working either as expats in these big companies. And so this was kind of a nice side job where they could be with their kids every day. Today, our workforce are women, many of whom are primary breadwinners in their households. They're depending on this as their career, and they have different needs than maybe we had 10 years ago.
Hmm.
And so, really understanding and knowing your workforce so that you can chart that path to the future, and being able to introduce things like technology
Hmm.
and all the things that are, always evolving. In a way that's digestible is really important in order to be able to meet the needs of the future. But I think, yes, that we talk a lot about the future of the workforce because we're growing. And
Hmm.
if we want to grow, we have to be able to scale. And the way we do things today is you're not just deciding for the next year or the next
Hmm.
quarter. We're making decisions today that'll impact how we operate when we're 5 times bigger than we are today, 10 times bigger than we are today.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think technology is really playing into that role, isn't it? Just with AI and just
AI.
all the different things we can do. It's so important. I appreciate that. You also, now you're a busy person. Like when I see someone is, you know, a business leader in their organization, they're busy, but yet you find time to also volunteer. And you volunteer with an organization that I'm familiar with, Women with Promise.
Mhm.
Talk a little bit about that organization and what volunteering for them has done for you.
I love talking about Women with Promise. Women with Promise is a group of women who are business leaders in the North
Mm,
Dallas area, the community, and they got together and said, "We want to make a difference and help other women." I remember seeing studies a few years ago about, women in the workforce and how oftentimes the biggest deterrent to women in the workforce were other women
mm,
and that competitive mindset. And I decided that day that wasn't my experience. I had women who were there who were, talking about you in a good way when you weren't in the room, who were opening doors for you, who were, giving you, candid, radical candor in terms of feedback. So my experience was different and I wanted to be intentional about that. And so Women with Promise allows us to help lift up other women who are emerging from very difficult circumstances in their lives, and we have an opportunity in a fun way
mm,
because we hold these events, networking events, and social events that raise these funds, and we get to channel those funds into these organizations and scholarship programs to help empower women. So on both ends, the people that come to the events are benefiting because they're getting to meet some amazing people and build their network. You're getting to meet
mm,
CHROs, CEOs, heads of organizations, and we have people that come to our events. They're open to anybody actually, and very junior people in their career are getting to have these, face-to-face time with people
mm,
that can become great mentors. But then at the end of the day, we're channeling these funds to some very, very impactful programs. And so for me, it has really helped me to really pursue something that's always been important to me. I've
mm,
never wanted to be successful just to be successful. I learned somebody taught me once, don't just settle for being successful, be significant.
mm,
And that was always like always in my mind, like helping improve the lives of women helps me feel like I'm honoring the many, many people, especially the women who helped me along the way.
mm. That is so good. In my book, I talk about how people that are significant, they give hope, and hope is an acronym for helping other people every day.
Yep.
And I feel like that's what you are. You're in that lane of significance. You see the need to give hope. And so I mean, volunteering, that's not just, I mean, that takes time, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It sure does. It sure
And
does.
I know Leisha Cadwalader is
Mhm.
amazing, and many of the board members that serve on that great organization. I'll put the link in the show notes. So if you want to
Thank you.
learn more about Women with Promise, I just want to encourage you to click that link and just like dive into maybe how you might be able to be a part of that as well. How many events do y'all have a year? Do y'all?
We have 4 or 5 events a
Okay.
year.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very popular events. Everything from just short networking opportunities to do like a social hour. We call them happiness hours.
Mm-hmm.
We do a scholarship luncheon. It's usually a very inspirational time to meet, dive deep into some educational topic. And then at the end of the year, everyone loves our fashion show at Neiman Marcus for the holiday,
Mm-hmm.
Cocktails and Couture. And it's a fun little runway experience. And we just really have a fun holiday time. And it's all for a very, very good cause. So,
I love that.
yeah,
I love that. And I know that that fills you up because you're able to help others, but also it's great networking. Like you're able to build incredible relationships with some of the women on the board. And
amazing. Yes,
I encourage people all the time, just find your lane, find a place for you to network because it can really just help your career in so many different ways. And it doesn't even feel like you're putting like you do a lot of work, but it doesn't feel like work because you're helping others, right?
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, that's so
Exactly.
good.
That's so
Oh my
true.
goodness, this is so good. I told you the time was going to fly by. I do want to ask you
Yes.
this one question, and that is for people that throughout your entire journey, it might have been your grandma, it might have been your parents, or somebody in the workplace. Would you share some advice that you were given that you find yourself sharing with others? Any thoughts around that?
Yes, like you say, there's so many women. My in my life, my grandmother, my mother to this day, having served in the military, and just seeing the way she's overcome adversity, and the way she's the biggest cheerleader in my life.
Mm,
And then the women along professionally. There's so many nuggets of advice that come to mind. One thing that really, really I kind of go back to on the daily is actually from a pastor who once said, always remember when you say yes to something,
mm,
you're saying no to something else.
mm,
And what that means is that it talks about commitments and being intentional with your time. Because if I say yes to so many great opportunities, that may mean I'm saying no to family time,
mm,
if I or my own health, taking care of my I have to like be intentional of how I what I say yes to,
mm,
and making sure that it's serving and for the things that I value, the people that I value. And so I loved, and I lean on that daily, is what am I saying yes to,
mm.
because I'm inadvertently saying no to something else.
Okay, I love this. I want to keep I want to keep on this topic because I'm getting better at saying no, and I have this kind of my something I deal with often, and maybe it's sometimes when you experience more success, now all of a sudden there's people want more of your time, and so therefore you have to figure out what makes sense. And so a lot of times I'll think, okay, well, I got to know what my values are. I got to know what my priorities are, and then I can make those decisions. Talk about that for a second. Is it hard for you to say no? How do you figure that out?
It can be. It's gotten a little bit easier because I'm so intentional about what I'm about, what I value,
Yeah.
and the relationships that I want to nurture and protect. And so it's harder to say no when you're not really sure. And or you're just, you don't see your time as something as valuable, if not more
Yeah.
than your bank account, right? It's really precious to me. So someone's time is always, I highly value it. And
Hmm.
so it isn't always as easy, but I've learned to say, I love that idea. I
Hmm.
would love nothing more than to be able to, help out with that. However, right now, that time
Yeah.
I'm really dedicated to this.
Yeah.
And I wish you well, and I'll definitely cheer you on. It's just not something I can commit to and
Yeah.
do a good job at.
Yeah, I remember early on, I'm like saying yes to anything and everything, and then all of a sudden I get busier and busier, and now all of a sudden I have to start picking. I was reading a book called The Coaching Habit. I think it's Michael
Mhm.
Bungay Stinger, and he had in there, he said, if it's not an easy yes, it's an easy no. And I was
I
like,
love
oh,
that.
oh,
I love
I'm
that.
gonna use that because sometimes I'll be like, I'm not sure. Well, that means it's a no.
So no,
So
yeah.
it's real easy. And then of course you say no to it and you don't do that. Next thing you know, you see all the fun they're having on social media. You're like, oh no, I missed out on a
I
good
should have
moment.
gone and done that. But you know what? There's seasons. And there are things that I used to
Yes.
have to say no to when I was younger because I had small children, or I was
Right.
at a different place in my career and I had to go to school, or I had to do other things. And now at this later stage, now my kids are grown, and
Yeah.
now I can say yes to other things that I couldn't before.
Yeah.
And now I find that now I can even say yes to myself sometimes. And I
Oh.
think that's the
Ooh.
greatest gift of all.
Ooh. Oh, I like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
Saying yes to myself. Yes, I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna have some thinking time. It's okay. Or reading time or whatever that is for yourself.
Whatever it is, your healthy
Yeah.
outlet, right? And sometimes, I'll get invited to something. I love to go to Zumba. That's like my thing. And
Yeah.
so it's the one thing that doesn't feel like working out. And I can sometimes say, no, I can't go to that
Yeah.
event because I have Zumba class. And that's okay.
I love that. And I've even given myself grace too if I don't feel good and I normally work and I work out each day, but if I can't go work out, I'm like, I'm just gonna give myself grace. I'm just gonna go over here and rest my
Exactly.
body. And this is so good. I love that. We could have a whole conversation just on this right here.
Just on that,
This is
right?
so much fun. Hey, I wanna shift to it's time to accelerate for the last part of the show. I do want to ask you some fun facts.
Sure.
Are you a reader? Do you have a favorite book?
Well, I love to read. I listen to books now more than I read them
Okay.
with
Yeah.
like actual live books. But
Yeah.
other than the good book, of course, I always go back to Seven Habits of Highly Effective People from
Oh,
a business
yes.
standpoint.
Yes.
Love that. I love to get lost in a good novel, a mystery, or the newest Latino writer is always very
Hmm.
drawn to that. So um, I find I learn a lot of ideas from that, and Adam Grant's work is always
Oh,
inspiring.
oh, he's so
Mhm.
good.
Yeah.
I wrote down Seven Habits because I was like, man, I need to go back and read that. It's been a long time since I've read that. That's so good. Hey,
I find myself even after so many years
yeah.
constantly begin with the end in mind,
Well,
and
I was doing a tour in my grandson's school recently, and they have the Seven Habits, and they're learning the Seven Habits. I'm like, I know
wow.
those. And, so begin with end in mind. That's so good. We talked about the importance of being continuous learners. What's something you want to learn?
Tonight I'm gonna go learn how to make pasta.
What?
Our church group, our ladies group, is gonna go to Italy in North Park and go learn how to make pasta. So I was like, I'm
That's
gonna learn how to make
fun.
pasta.
How about
Yeah.
that? That's so cool. I love that.
Um,
How about away from the workplace? I think you might have already mentioned it. What's something that energizes you?
Really, what energizes me in and out of work is just gratitude and
Oh,
just being so thankful, spending time with my grandbabies. I'm so thankful for have them in my life and to be in this season that fills my heart so much. Going to my place of worship fills my heart.
mm,
Spending time with friends and family, it just there's nothing like that. And to me, that just energizes me. It makes me so grateful to just have the opportunities I have.
I love
And
that.
dancing.
In dancing. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. I was going to say we are so aligned until you got to the dancing part. And I'm like, I can't move my body. It's so good. I have one final question. This is probably my favorite question that I like to ask Jackie, and that's Jackie, 10 years older, is around the corner and she's knocking at your door, and you're going to go answer that door. What's she going to tell you?
She's going to say, you see, you thought you were winding down, but you were just getting started.
Keep going.
Hmm.
I
Keep
love
going.
that. I
Yeah.
love that. This has been so much fun. I appreciate you coming on the show and just sharing your perspective. I know it's going to help a lot of people. If someone heard something you shared today and they're like, I don't know Jackie, or I want to connect with Jackie. What's the best way for them to connect with you?
I would invite them to reach out on LinkedIn. That's always an easy way to find me and,
Yep.
connect with a lot of people that way, or come to a Women with Promise event. And I'd be honored to shake your hand and
Mm.
have a chat with you. That'd be amazing.
I love that. And if you reach out to Jackie on LinkedIn, be sure and let her know you heard her on Life in the Leadership Lane. It makes it that much easier to connect, and maybe even share something that she shared that might, that you want to dive into, or something that she shared that might have inspired you in some way. And so I'm so grateful for you, for all
Thank
of the years
you.
that we have been together and just continue to do life together.
Oh,
And
same,
just
same.
so grateful for our friendship. Thanks for coming on the show, Jackie.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, I'll talk to you later.